Yeah. And you won it nicely.
They thought they were going to go to the junkyard with it, but my cousin fixed it.
My gosh, that's incredible. Incredible.
2 minutes until showtime.
It just shows if you want to race, you'll find a way to do it, right?
Yeah, especially back in the days. That really was part of the deal.
And really, everybody was in the same boat, too, weren't they?
Well, close. You know, Petty had a factory deal already.
Yeah.
Some sponsorship money. And plus, he had won so many times, and the win money was big.
Oh, yeah.
Compared to the rest of the park.
Sure.
Usually the win was double whatever second place was, and then second on down, it would graduate down, get down to around $50 back there where I finished. So.
Oh my gosh. How could you afford to race back then? That must have been a struggle. That's where the sacrifice came in, right?
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. So who do you like for the race tomorrow?
NASCAR.
1 minute until showtime.
I had a guy tell me last night, he used to work at the speed. Well, no, it was Woody. Woody told the story about how he went to lunch one time with Brian and Bill Sr. Brian was just a kid, and he said, well, Grandpa, how will I get to run NASCAR someday? And Bill says, just keep breathing.
Just keep breathing. Yes.
I thought that was great answer.
Quite a deal.
Yeah. Could you ever have imagined what it became? I mean, we knew it was cool back in the day, but
I saw it in its best days.
yeah, yes, you did. You did, and it was really kind of a family, wasn't it?
It was. It was. You know, Annie took
Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
And we're off.
Blog Talk Radio.
Now, from the world's most famous beach, from where beach racing began, it's the Legends of Racing radio show. Live from racing's North Turn Beach Bar and Grill in Ponce Inlet, Florida. The Legends of Racing radio show. And your host, Buzz McKim.
Oh, thank you, everybody, but that wasn't for me. That was for these guys. We have a red letter day today. We have Bobby and Daonnie Allison here, 2 Allisons on one stage. You guys do a lot of these sort of things together, or is this kind of an unusual thing for you?
Probably a little bit more now than we used to. We were always so busy racing and doing other things. Very seldom did we get together. But once in a while, we'd have a get-together like this. It always turned out real good.
Well, we certainly are thrilled to have you, and we want to thank our friend John Holland for helping arrange this whole thing. And also, since we're saying thanks, we ought to say thanks to a fan, Bob, who gave us this Winston ashtray. I was supposed to mention it last week, and I forgot. But I thought it was very appropriate now with Bobby and Daonnie here, since they're so associated with Winston. But, you know, one thing I've always wondered about y'all, Bobby, who was your inspiration to get into racing?
Oh,
Well, my granddad came to live with us when we were kids. You know, I was probably 8, 10, 11 years, 8 or 10, maybe even 11 years old. And he took me to the races at Opelika Speedway one day, and that sold me. And you know, then different people around the neighborhood. There was a neighbor that really enjoyed the racing, and I'd mow his grass and get to go to the races, and that would help along. And I was so fortunate that my senior year in high school, they built Hialeah Speedway. And so I graduated from high school and went to racing just pretty much full time.
Yeah.
Got sent off to Wisconsin for a year and worked for Mercury Outboard Motors for that year, but got a little bit of an education and preparation, and just got back to into the racing deal in South Florida, and then found Alabama.
Yeah.
So just really, and lots of good friends in Alabama early on. I met Bo Fields real early in the cycle there, and he was a great help to me. And Tom Gore, he was the Chevy dealer in Hueytown, and well, I'm actually in Bessemer, and he's the one that redid BIR Birmingham Raceway, and paved it, and then promoted the races there, and really made a show place out of that, and we had great times there. Daonnie and I went quite a bit there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I heard you kind of stunk up the show sometimes.
Well, we didn't think.
I don't think we ever stunk the show up.
We helped it a lot.
Well, now, Daonnie, how about you? Now, your interests growing up were different than Bobby's, though. You were more athletic, is that right? You did a lot of diving, things like that?
Well, Bobby was, I don't guess, never into ball sports as much as I was. Both of us were very, very small early on. Nothing like we look now. But anyway, in school, I loved football. I was just too little to play. I tried, and sometimes it didn't work out too well. So I took up swimming and diving. You didn't have to be any certain size, and I really worked at it hard. We had a municipal swimming pool they built close to our house, and that's where I went every day. I never had an official coach. I had a lifeguard at that swimming pool that helped me diving. Well, in 1954, I won the Florida AU Championship in Largo, Florida. And I was one of about 27 kids diving at that age group, and I was scared to death. I'd never been away from home. I never been that far from home.
Yeah.
You know, even though it was only less than 200 miles.
Yeah.
And when I went there, I went out. The coach that was over the municipal diving group then at the time was the coach at Carl Gables High School, and he said for me to go on the diving board and do a few dives. Well, I went out there, and people won't remember now, but it was a wooden slat board. You know, they used to build it with wood straight up and down, and I bounced on it. It was like bouncing on this table, or even. And I come back to him and I said, I can't dive off that board. He said, you got to. That's the only one we got. Well, believe me, I was 14 years old and I was scared to death. The next day, the diving started. I had every dive like you would have drew it on a board.
Really?
I mean, they said when I did a gainer and a half, I didn't even make a splash on the water. I said I had to because I wasn't the water. And I won it, ironically, by 27 points.
Oh, my gosh.
That's a lot in diving.
Yes,
That's
sir.
a lot.
Yep.
And, I mean, well, then I had a bad accident on a motorcycle and broke my left leg real bad, and that kind of ended my diving. I had a double compound fracture in my left leg, stayed in the hospital 13 and a half weeks in traction. Anyway, well, then he started racing. And I wasn't really interested. I went roller skating. I didn't care to go to the races. Well, he didn't tell you in high school. We went to high school with a guy named Fran Kersey. I don't know if people remember or not. He was a coach at Kentucky.
Sure.
Bobby bought a 38 Chevrolet Coupe from Fran Kersey. And we made it the first race car.
How about
And from then it just progressed on and on. My mother was very, 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 very much against it. My father, he was kind of neutral. He would say something more to us when we were by ourselves than he would when my mom was around. But anyway, that started. Bobby got going, and then I got started by accident. A guy down the street got a car, and he wanted me to go to the races with him. I said, I don't go to the races. I go roller skating. No, we got to go to the races. I'll pay your way in. So we went. And we were parked at Hialeah Speedway way, way, way out in the marsh. That's how many cars they had. Well, he goes out and practices the first time, and he comes in, and he says to me, well, how did I do? And I said, I could drive that damn thing better than that. So he said, well, you drive it the next time. I said, no, I don't want to drive it. Anyway, I did. When I came in, he said, yeah, drove it better than me. You race it. I don't want to race it. I ended up racing it that night. We had a tow bar, hook it up, got to my mom and dad's house where I lived, and we had a driveway we went around to the back yard. Well, he drives around there and he gets out and he starts unhooking his tow bar. I said, oh, no, 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 you can't let, my dad will have a fit. My mom will blow that thing up. He said, I'm going to just let you have it. So the next week I went to Hialeah Speedway and I ran pretty good for the second time ever. And they're having a special race on Sunday. Bobby's winning the races in his, what do you call it, amateur car at the time. And they're going to protest his engine. That's $75 extra. So we go to Medley Speedway, and in the heat race, I break the axle key. And old model Ford Greene had to pull it all apart to put a key in. But anyway, I was out.
Yeah.
Well, he wins the first 2 races he runs. He wins the heat race and the match race. Comes time for the consi, I'm eligible to run, but I got no car. So they talked Bobby into letting me drive his car. Oh, man. He won, so I can win. Well, I commenced to knock the fence. No, I didn't. The fence didn't move. I commenced to destroy his race car.
Oh, no.
Well, they took me to the hospital. I had a big dent in my helmet where it hit the roll cage in there. Anyway, I come back to the shop, and he's cutting this car up with a torch. He did ask me, was I okay?
Oh, that's
when
nice.
I first walked in.
Yeah,
Are you okay? Yes.
That's
well,
what
then he
brothers
let me
do,
have it.
right? Yeah.
You will never make no race car driver. You won't do it. I'll show you. And that is the gospel truth of my mother, how I got started racing.
That's
and
amazing.
from that point on, I think I did show him.
Oh, yeah. So you never started out to be a racer, though. You were
No.
going to be a roller skater.
No, I mean, I really didn't have an interest in it at the time.
Yeah.
You know, I had roller skating. I had several real close friends. That's all we did. We went on Wednesdays and Saturday nights.
Yeah.
And we had a big outdoor rink in Hialeah. And it was really, really nice.
Neat. Well, you mentioned your diving. I had a cousin that was on a high diving team in college, and he was really pretty good, but he got thrown off for peeing in the pool. You figure, oh, that's not such a big deal. Yeah, but he did it from the high diving board. Didn't work out well at all.
Well, we used to stay in the C-dip right down the road here. All the Petties and Allisons and Parrots
C-dip.
and everybody. We used to put on some pretty good diving expeditions, me and Buddy Parrott.
Oh, yeah.
Every year we were down here.
Did you ever compete against Buddy back in those days?
No.
No.
I could have beat him easy. That was nothing.
There you go. Well, yeah, one thing I was wondering, could we talk a little bit about your 84 NASCAR wins?
Oh.
Why don't we talk about all 85 of them while we're talking?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Just a minor detail I overlooked. I'm sorry.
I knew that was coming.
Yeah. What about that 85th win? What happened there?
Well, it's the only race in the NASCAR record book that doesn't have a winner right now.
That's right.
And, you know, it was a strange deal. You know, they couldn't get full fields of cars on the short tracks. And so they said, the secondary cars could run.
The Mustangs, things like that?
The Grand
You can
Americans,
get closer.
the Grand Americans could run fit to fill in the show back at the show. Well, Tiny Nunn had a Camaro that was pretty good, and he jumped in there right away. And Melvin Joseph had a Mustang. He had Ralph Moody built it for him for USAC races. USAC at the time was running a competitive thing with Grand National, but they allowed the pony cars to run with the full-size coupes and the regular race cars. And so they had this car and sitting there kind of idle. Actually, it was at Holman and Moody's. And so Ralph Moody said, let's get that thing ready for Winston-Salem. And so we did, and I won Winston-Salem. And so it counted for probably for a few weeks or maybe a month or two. Tiny Nunn won a couple. And then France Sr. decided, well, he didn't really want the little cars running with the big cars. And so he said, well, that deal's over with, and those wins won't count. So I always thought they gave the win to Richard Petty, you know.
Oh, yeah, that's what they normally would have done.
The Pope is not going to take one away from Richard Petty, so I certainly wasn't going to get it.
The Pope, is that right?
but yeah, just whoever. But as time went on, I found out nobody got the wins. And then Tiny Lund got killed, unfortunately, and his widow went and campaigned with France Jr. And France Jr. put Tiny's 2 wins back in the NASCAR record book. And so I always felt like, well, I was entitled to credit for that win, and based on that, I still feel like I'm entitled to it. So that's my story.
Yeah, well, we were hoping, you just recently had your 80th birthday last December, and I thought it would have been nice if NASCAR had sent you a nice birthday card with an 85th win in there, but it didn't happen, did it?
The guy that can do that is no longer here.
Oh, yeah. I know who you're talking about.
Unfortunately,
There's a lot to that story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, now, y'all were known to ruffle a few feathers over the years, and you think it might have been one of them gotchas?
That's wrong.
Oh, no?
No, we didn't ruffle them. Somebody ruffled them. We smoothed them out.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Sure. Yeah, but one thing about the Allisons, though, the one thing I've always admired about them is that they absolutely stand firm in what they believe, and regardless of the consequences. And you know exactly where they stand. And that's the character of these guys is just beyond reproach. And sometimes it was to your detriment, but you hung tough with what you believed was right.
I think maybe sometimes it might have been, but that's the way we were raised.
we raised that. We worked hard on everything we got involved with. We helped each other a lot. We raced each other really hard and strong, but we raced each other pretty well for being as close as we were, as competitive as we were. We still helped the show become a really good show, and we beat those other guys sometimes when they didn't think they should be beat, and that's kind of unfortunate from their standpoint, as far as I see it.
It certainly was. Well, we got a break for just a minute for a word from Homewood Suites by Hilton. We'll be right back.
The caution flag is out. Time for a break. We'll be right back with the Legends of Racing radio show. Welcome to Homewood Suites by Hilton in Daytona Beach. You're right in the middle of all the action. Daytona International Speedway, the airport, One Daytona, Florida's newest entertainment and retail destination, and of course, the world's most famous beach. You'll love our newly remodeled 1- and 2-bedroom suites, along with our popular King Studios. You won't need your full kitchen, as Homewood Suites Daytona serves up complimentary breakfast and evening social. It's like home away from home. Go to HomewoodDaytona.com for Homewood Suites by Hilton in Daytona Beach. We're back from where it all began, racing's original North Turn Beach Bar and Grill. The Legends of Racing radio show continues with your host, Buzz McKim.
Well, we're back again. We have Bobby and Daonnie Allison here, and I've got to mention a guy who's really kind of an unsung hero of NASCAR. That little Mustang that you drove was owned by Melvin Joseph.
Yep.
He had a construction company in Delaware. He was the guy who made Dover Speedway into a speedway. It was a horse track. And he also owned cars that raced on the beach. This is a great picture right here of Banjo Matthews. There's Mel over on the left. Well, let's try this one first. There's Mel over here. And in the middle is Banjo Matthews, the driver and great engine builder. And then Tom Wolfe out of Reading, Pennsylvania, who was a premier engine builder. On the backside here, we have Mel and the beauty queen, Banjo, and Tom Wolfe, and Owen Hope's old buddy, Ed Otto. We'll have to tell you that story a little bit later on. But anyway, Ed was a vice president of NASCAR. But Melvin's cars were very, very successful. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, Banjo won the very last modified race on the beach in one of Mel's cars and the very first modified race on the speedway in Mel's car. So he had good equipment, didn't he?
And his daughter is sitting right there.
That's right. Joanne Adams right there. You want to wave? Yay. There we go. Yeah, we have some other celebrities here. Skip McCarthy right there. Skip, could you stand up and show that jacket? Skip worked as a crew member for Bobby and Daonnie at various times. And this goes back to the Rossi Automotive Dodge number 22. Yeah, great stuff. And then also, I love this. Skip worked with Daonnie at Dyguard, and this is his crew shirt. They were the NASCAR pit crew champions that year. So that was a nice combination, you know, you guys and that rascal sitting right over there. How about that? And then in the back there, we got our old buddy Owen Hopes, who was one of the victims of the show. He was into drag racing. He worked for Ray Fox most of the time. But he won one of the drag meets at the Speedway when they used to race there on pit road. And Ed Otto claimed that he was going to be given a brand new pickup truck to the winner. Owen's still waiting for that pickup truck to show up in his yard. That was, what, 1960. Got a picture of your buddy Ed Otto right here, huh? Yeah. You better be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, now, Pat, Donnie's wife, had given me some interesting stats here. Daonnie raced late models, modifieds, and baby grand cars, right? Of course, Cup. And won races in 15 different states at 33 different racetracks. And probably back in the early days, the traveling wasn't the easiest thing to do, right?
No, we went to a lot more than that. There was a lot of, you know, we did that in about 2.5 hours riding down here from North Carolina. And Pat was asked to get those stats together if we could, and she was asking me, did I win here? And it was pretty hard to remember. I ran so many different places that I didn't win. But, you know, when you get to look, I get to looking at that now after it's holy mackerel. I didn't really realize that I had one race in that many states. And just like with Bobby, you know, if he did the same thing, he'd be that many or more. And I never kept up with that when I raced. I mean, it might be the wrong thing, but I didn't feel like I had to tell people I won. You know, they already knew it. But it's a real thrill to look back on what we did. And I say we because Bobby and I, for the better part of 6 years, we went everywhere together. When one car pulled up into a racetrack, the other one was either right in front of or right behind it. And when the race was over, one was in the front, the other one was right behind it. The next race would be vice versa. But it's quite a thrill to look back at that. And
You wouldn't change a thing, would you?
no, well, maybe a little bit here or there. See, I never really ran for a championship. And modified or anything else. And, you know, I never really, for some reason, put an emphasis on that. You know, people ask me what I would change in my racing. The only thing I would change in Cup or anything is solicit a real good team that ran for the championship, because I probably would have won it.
Yeah, I believe so. Now, Bobby, of course, everybody knows your Cup championship in '83, but then you had several modified championships, too.
Yeah, I had 4 modified champion, 2 modified special, which was the division that they called the guys that ran like Georgia, Alabama, and down in Florida. They allowed us to do the cars a little bit different than the northern modifieds. But then I won 2 years in the modified, so 4 years in modified special. And then I ran second in the Grand National thing 5 times before I finally won.
That's right.
So,
yeah, but you're always in there, pounding.
stayed right after it.
Amazing, yeah. Now, did you ever race much dirt in your career?
Really, you know, dirt was a strange territory to me. And the first dirt race I ever won was I beat Richard Petty at Savannah one night.
All right.
Half-mile dirt. I thought that was really, really good. and he didn't like it, and so that made me think it was even better.
It was even better.
But won that one on dirt, and then after that I won a couple more times on dirt, either some short track stuff or whatever. But I could always find a pavement track with a good purse or something on the nights of the dirt track
Yeah.
deal. Had the good races, and I just avoided that dirt.
Yeah. Yeah. But how about you, Daonnie? Do you do much dirt racing?
No, I didn't. In fact, when I came to Alabama, we looked for asphalt. I told everybody I learned to drive on paved streets in Florida. I didn't drive many dirt streets, but I too beat some pretty predominant drivers in dirt. I went to Columbia with the baby Grand, and I beat Buck Baker that night.
Whoa.
And
Man.
several other races. I ran super modified at Cleveland, Tennessee a couple of times and ran really good. I didn't win the race there, but I sat on the pole and I liked it, but I just didn't do it that much.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I never saw David Pearson run dirt, but was he as good as people say he was?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. He drove every racetrack he ever ran on, road course, anything else, he could drive. And David, for a lot of years, he didn't get the hoopla. They didn't make a big
really.
thing of it.
Yep. Yeah, but now how about super modified sprint cars, anything like that? Midgets?
Well, Bobby and I both ran super modifieds for a period of time there, but I did a lot more than Bobby did. I really liked them. I liked the fact that I was in command of the thing the whole time, and I could run as fast as my right foot would stay down, and it stayed down a pretty good bit. But then, really, I think that made me a better IndyCar driver.
Really?
See, I went to Indy. I never had any problem with the IndyCar. I liked them. Had very good luck in them. I didn't have good luck during practice weeks, but a race I did. And Bobby was just the opposite. He went there and was tremendous in practice and qualifying. And first race, he blew up the first lap.
Oh, Lord.
And, he just never had the luck to be able to go. He would have done very well if he had. But Super Modified was, I would say, one of my favorites.
Yeah, and Daonnie, to this day, I believe, is the only NASCAR driver to win Rookie of the Year at the Indy 500. That was a major, major deal. There was always kind of a rift between Indy and NASCAR, and I really believe you were a big part of healing that rift.
I think that's a little bit why it wasn't publicized as much as it was later on, you know. But, see, something I didn't know, Davey, before he died, we went to Indy one year. Well, the first time I went back, and God knows, it had to be in 91, the year before Davey died. He died in 93.
Right.
And then media people come down to me and he said, you're the last rookie that ran full 500 miles.
Holy cow.
Until Nigel Mansell did it. Amazing. That was 20 years.
Gee.
And I said, no, I didn't know that. Appreciate you telling me. But it was a very big honor to get to run there, and it was also a bigger honor to do as well as I did.
Oh, really? Yeah, and it sure shone well on NASCAR. And you got to drive for Foyt, which probably to some folks might not have been the easiest
That's a
job.
whole nother story.
Yeah, old Tex.
A.J. Foyt.
What an interesting
character. Don't get me talking about A.J. Foyt.
This is a family show, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, if
he had Daonnie, and he could have put Daonnie in winner's circle, and he chose not to.
Really?
That's the way I see it.
Yeah, yep.
Well, anyway.
Daonnie went so good in those cars right off the bat, and came back the second year with a way worse car, and still did really good. Ran sixth the second year. And, I really always stayed kind of disappointed with that whole situation on account of that. Daonnie certainly could have done better at Indy with the right kind of a push.
Yep. Yeah, but what would you think would be your career highlight?
I think probably, Bobby won his first Winston Cup race, or Grand Nash, what you call it, at Rockingham in '67. I won my very first race at Rockingham in '68.
Really?
Yeah. But I think the highlight of my career, I don't want to get into all the details, but Dyegard and I, we parted under very unfriendly terms. And I went back to Alabama, put my short track car together with the help of Bobby. I had a place in his shop where I worked on it, paid him $100 a month. I don't even think I paid him, but anyway, I built myself back to where I was in the front every weekend. Well, they called me to drive Haas's car at Talladega because AJ couldn't be there. He had to go back to Indy with the rain out or something. But anyway, I drove Haas's car, and that led up to running his car in some more races. Well, we went to Darlington and had the fastest car and had a problem. Well, then come time for the National 500 at Charlotte. Well, I passed Cale Yarborough about 5 times and finally got ahead of him. I won the race. And after the race and after all the hoopla, Victor Lane, Media Center, I ran into Bill Gardner standing there, and I walked up and I punched him in the chest as hard as I could punch him. I'm the SOB that couldn't drive, remember?
There you go.
And that to me was very, very rewarding because I was told on a boat right up the river here in the marina that I couldn't drive anymore.
Oh, jeez. And you showed them.
When I got fired.
Oh, yeah.
And I knew better than that.
Yeah, really. We're going to take a break for a second for Racing's North Turn. We'll be right back.
The caution flag is out. Time for a break. We'll be right back with the Legends of Racing radio show. Racing's original North Turn is our broadcast headquarters. If you're looking for a good drink, great entertainment, and the best in food, they're right on the beach at Racing's original North Turn. Rhonda and Walt invite you to come on down to dinner tonight. Here are a couple of testimonials. These are actual testimonials from people who have enjoyed the North Turn. Been there many times, always great food and drinks, great location on the beach. And another, what a great experience. It's my new favorite restaurant in the Daytona Beach area, Racing's Original North Turn on South Atlantic Avenue. That's A1A in Ponce Inlet, about 3.2 miles south of the Dunlawton Bridge and A1A intersection. It's Racing's Original North Turn, a restaurant, museum, bar, gift shop, live music. That's Racing's North Turn. Racing's North Turn has been voted by you top 10 beach bar 7 years in a row. Next year, they're going for top 5. We're back from where it all began. Racing's original North Turn Beach Bar and Grill. The Legends of Racing radio show continues with your host, Buzz McKim.
Hey, thank you, folks. Appreciate it. We have a nice surprise here. A fella just came walking through the door to say hello. And over here in the gray shirt, white hat, how about David Reagan, NASCAR Sprint Cup driver. Thanks for stopping by, David. Good luck this weekend. Very cool. Okay. All right. We have a question from the audience here. Now, is this Peter from New York, right?
Yes.
Whereabouts in New York?
Harrison, just outside the city in Westchester.
Yeah. Okay. Well, now, your family originally is from New York, aren't they?
My dad was from Harrison.
Was he really? From Harrison?
Harrison, New York?
And that's where you're from?
Yeah, right outside New York City.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's your town, too?
Yeah.
Now, that's a weird deal.
Wow.
Hey, how about an applause for Harrison, New York?
Wow.
Hey.
My mom was from Dumont, New Jersey, which is right across the bridge also.
Wow.
I'll be darned. Yeah, you have a question for us, right?
Yeah, maybe the both of you could answer it. How would you guys like to drive in today's car? Given the speed,
Oh, I'd
the
love it.
comfort,
Oh, I don't, and the money.
and the money. How do you think you would do?
Well, let me.
Like we always did. It would be no problem for either one of us.
I figured that.
You know, it's still, you got to sit and just like everybody says, racing is not like it used to be. It is exactly, because it starts with the green and ends with the checkered.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
I mean, the technology has changed it so much. I never liked running the car wide open because, like Bobby told somebody one time, he didn't like restrictor plates because that made you as good as him and you weren't. to be a good race, the cars have got to be where the driver has to back off. You can't hold the throttle wide open because then that takes the driving ability out of it. That takes the brains, and there's sometimes very thin. But I ran good on restrictor plate races. He ran good on restrictor plate races. And like today, if we got in a car today, we would, like he just said, we'd do like we always did. We'd be in the front somewhere.
Absolutely. Yeah. Appreciate it, Peter. Thank you. Hey.
Did I answer that for you?
Now, Bobby, what would be your highlight of your career?
It probably would have to be the one race, the main race I can't remember.
Really?
They tell me in 1988 that I won the Daytona 500.
Right.
And they tell me the best young man in the race was second to me, my son Davey.
Yay, Davey. Absolutely.
To this day, I still do not remember that race. Now, I've looked at videos, and I've read books, and I've read reports, and I've looked at pictures, and somehow it just has not come back. You know, when I first woke up in that hospital room, I knew nothing. And little things came to me little by little, and somebody would come up and say hello. It may have been one of my best friends, and I wouldn't recognize him, but at least it got something restarted. And I remember a lot, started to remember a lot of it, and further back, you know, memory back around the 70s and 80s is reasonably okay. But Daytona 88 still is missing. And so I've decided I've got to put up with that, and so I may as well be happy about it instead of unhappy. And so here I am.
Well, people don't know, Buzz. I can go along with what he's saying because I also had a pretty bad head injury. Unless you've had a head injury, it's hard to understand what he's telling you. I don't remember anything about the day that I wrecked at Charlotte, with the exception I finally remembered sitting in the car getting ready to go, and the guard tried to make my twin sons get out off pit road. And I said, no, they're with me. Well, Pat tells me I got in an argument with the guard at the gate that morning, but I didn't remember that.
I find it hard to believe that you would argue with anybody.
Yeah, he hardly ever argued with any of the guards.
But anyway, I asked the neurosurgeon in Alabama when they sent me to Alabama. Later on, I asked him, why don't I remember that stuff? He said, that's the way your brain does to protect you.
Really?
And he says, then you don't have to go through that trauma again.
Amazing.
And I took him at his word. I never worried about it again. But, you know, I understand what Bobby's saying. Some people say, well, how did he not remember that? And he remembers so much earlier. I can tell you everything that ever happened at races earlier. And it's just one of those things that's unfortunate with the head injury. I really hope nobody ever has another one because they're terrible.
So NASCAR's concussion protocol is really a good thing that has
definitely
come along.
A good thing.
Yeah.
And see now, the safety in the cars, and people keep harping on the safety. Well, it's a race car. I mean, how safe is a race car? But now they got protection for the head and for the legs and stuff like that, which helps everything. And I don't see how it could be much better. They got the driver now sitting in a cocoon.
Yeah.
And to me personally, I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand anything touching my head when I drove. And I don't know about Bobby, but I want to be in full control over where I move my head and my peripheral vision. I look more out the sides than I did out the front.
Really?
But anyway, you know, NASCAR is doing a fantastic job of that. They've done a lot of research. They've had a lot of good doctors that worked on it, and I'm proud of that fact.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and racing had always been a reactive sport when it came to safety, and now the last 20, 25 years, it's become a very proactive sport, which is great. But you take some of the real old-timers like Sterling Moss, one of the great drivers of all time. He never wore a seatbelt, and his attitude was, you make him safe, what's the sense? That's kind of
well, you know, really and truthfully, Buzz, if you look back on it, there was a lot of years that it wasn't proactive, like you said. You always waited till something happened before they fixed the problem, and that's
right.
like closing the barn after the horse gets out.
Yeah.
And now they're trying to get ahead of some of the things, trying to prevent some things from happening, and which is good. And NASCAR can definitely afford to do the research and development it takes to do that, and I'm proud of that.
I bet you wish they had soft walls back in your day, right? I cannot imagine hitting a concrete
Yeah, because
wall.
I've been headed that way a lot of time, and I would say, damn, this is going to hurt.
Yeah, it left a mark, right? I remember that time with the number 27 car in the Daytona 500. That nose was as flat as you could make it. You must have hit that baby head on, right?
Pretty hard.
Yeah.
And I think the wreck that, out of all the wrecks I ever had, the one that got my attention most was in the Busch car, the 23 car, when I was trying. Bobby won the race that day, and the restart of the race, I finally got a lap back. I had a lap down from early on. I finally was able to get it back, and I had the fastest car. If I had got crashed, I'd have won the race. But his crew chief at the time was his ex-son-in-law, and he told him, see if you can catch a DA when he comes by. But we had a wreck in the trial one.
Yeah.
And when I got turned sideways and hit the wall, I watched my hood look like a Frisbee going up in the stands like that. And, of course, I wasn't concerned about my well-being at the time. I was worried about whoever that hood was going to hit.
Right.
And, of course, I turned around, and I'm looking at L.D. Odger's drive shaft and windshield, and I said, turn over, you son of a gun. You're the cause of all this. But you know, the cars are a lot better than people think they are. And but hitting the wall ain't fun.
Nope. Now, Bobby, when you first got into quote Cup racing, Grand National racing, the cars were a little more basic, weren't they?
Yeah, in fact, quite a bit more basic than what they are now.
I'm trying to be gentle.
That first Chevelle that I won my first Cup win with, that was a car I bought in a junkyard in Birmingham.
Wow.
It had been underwater, and so it didn't have any damage. It just had the damage to the street use of the vehicle due to it being underwater. And we built that thing there in that garage. And in Norris Friel, I went to Norris Friel and I said, let me put one of these Holman Moody front snouts on the car. It made a really nice front snout situation, and you know, I like Ralph Moody, and the cars drove good, and so I said just weld one of those on there because that's what they were doing with their cars, the Fords and the Mercuries. And Norris Field said, no, you can't do that. If you're going to build one of those Chevrolets, you got to make everything look like the Chevrolet. And so we went to work in a little shop in the backyard in Hueytown, got that first front steer built, and I took it to the racetrack and I liked it. And so then went out with that car, and the fourth time out with that, I won my first Cup race.
Holy cow. In the little Chevelle that could.
Yeah.
That was a great little car. And well, you had a heck of a helpmate all those years too. Judy stood by you pretty tight, didn't she?
Yeah, for sure, yes.
Yeah, you can't do anything without the right woman, that's for sure. Yeah, well, when we come back, we're going to talk about a little short guy with no neck from South Carolina, if you know who I'm talking about. So we're going to have a break now for Beach Boys Embroideries and Tees, and we'll be right back.
The caution flag is out. Time for a break. We'll be right back with the Legends of Racing radio show. At Beach Boys Embroidery and Tees, it's all about making you happy. Beach Boys Embroidery can customize your athletic golf apparel, caps, hats, badges, buttons, magnets, backpacks, bags, totes, clocks, watches, oh, and of course, T-shirts. Sure, they're at 2033 South Ridgewood Avenue in South Daytona, and they're waiting for you to call now. 386-255-5880. Beach Boys Embroidery and Tees. We're back from where it all began, racing's original North Turn Beach Bar and Grill. The Legends of Racing radio show continues with your host, Buzz McKim.
Thank you. As you know, over the last couple of weeks, we've been hanging a painting over here behind the stage, and it's stuff that I had painted over the years. This one I did back in the early 90s, and it's Tiny Lund winning the Daytona 500 in 1963. He came to the track with no car to drive and had 17 cents in his pocket, and he was looking for a ride. Marvin Panch was scheduled for that race to drive that car for the Wood Brothers, and he was hurt in a sports car accident. He got burned. So from the hospital bed, he asked the Woods to put Tiny in the race, in the car. And they ran the whole race on one set of tires. They never changed a tire. And one less pit stop for fuel. And Tiny went from nothing to winning the biggest race in racing, and obviously the biggest race of his career. So it's really the NASCAR Cinderella story. So I just thought I'd pass that along. Yeah. So we had another question from the audience. When you folks ran down at Hialeah, what class did you race?
Tires.
Oh, no, what class? Was it late model?
Started in amateur.
Amateur,
Yeah,
uh-huh.
started in amateur, then
Right.
went to, we called them modifieds pretty early on, but then there was a sportsman division, and the sportsman mixed in with the modifieds, and so I ran some sportsmen, and then went from there to modifieds. Modifieds were, had bigger engines and
Multiple
carburation, and you know, all the goodies at the time.
Yep. Now, your first super speedway win was Rockingham in '67, and I believe you drove that blue number 11 Holman and Moody house car, right?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
That was my first super speedway win. I had won some NASCAR Grand National short tracks
Yep.
up before then, but I had not won a 500 miler. And so we're working on a car in a little backyard garage in Hueytown. The phone rang, and the voice said, "You're going to get a call in 2 minutes. The answer is yes," and hung up. I said, "Why is that Ralph Moody aggravating me?" So I recognized his voice. You know, any of y'all that knew Ralph at all, he had a really New England brogue for sure.
Yeah.
So anyway, within 2 minutes, the phone rang again. This is Freddie Lorenzen. Ford gave me a car for Rockingham. Will you drive it? The answer is yes. So I went over to Rockingham and really was impressed with Freddie's method of preparation for the event. And got the car where it drove really good, and didn't worry about the overall speed. The speed was good and competitive, so didn't worry about trying to add to the speed. Just make sure the car drove good, but also that all four of the tires were heating properly and, you know, wearing properly and all that. And so then when the race started, I could have been on the pole, but the Ford cars were all using no inliners at the time, and so this is I was going to qualify. Somebody told on me, and so I had to back up and get a set of tires that had interliners, which were a little bit slower. Ended up third, and started third. Freddie told me, he said, "You got to take care of the car, but you got to lead a lap to show them you can lead." So it had the green flag, and I immediately had a caution, and so we're the old single file restarts like they were back then, and had another restart and caution immediately again. On the 10th lap, we had the third restart, and I led the 11th lap.
Nice.
And I came around by the the pits the next time by, and Freddie Lorenzen was standing with a sign out in the grass in the infield with the code word, which meant back off the gas, save the car. The code word was think.
Oh.
And
Yeah.
so I eased up, stayed there about 4th or 5th all afternoon, about 400 laps into the race, 500 lapper back then. Gail was driving for Wood Brothers. They had a little Mercury, which was like the little Fairlanes were. And he was coming to lap me, and Freddie came out there with a sign with go on it. And I mashed on the gas pedal and drove away from Cale, and then Cale had the misfortune of losing an engine, and so I didn't have to race anybody to the rest of the way.
Yeah.
And the bottom line of the whole thing was about 20 laps to go, I started getting a vibration in the car, and I couldn't tell what it was, but kind of take it easy best I could. And then I started getting grease inside the car, so something was leaking grease bad enough to either splash it on the body work or the underneath work or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I tiptoed and tiptoed, came around there and won that race, went to pull up in Victory Lane, and as I started into Victory Lane, the transmission broke in two and fell out.
Holy cow.
So they had to get under there and hold all the broken pieces up to get the car up into Victory Lane, push the car into Victory Lane. So
Amazing.
Taught me a real lesson about taking care of the
Well,
equipment.
see, well, people don't realize at that time, that race was over 5 hours long.
Yeah.
When I won the race the next year, it was 5 hours and 20 minutes
Oh, Lord.
that I sat in that hot car all day.
Son
And,
of a gun.
you know, that's unheard of nowadays, but back then, Martinsville, Virginia would start at 1 o'clock and run to 6
Jeez.
before we got 500 laps done at Martinsville.
And that's intense racing.
And I
too.
mean, Darlington, South Carolina, these kids were up there last week at Chicagoland complaining about the heat. I said, they want to be hot. 1969 Southern 500 in Darlington, it was 118 degrees outside the car.
Man, oh, man.
See that son of a gun wrecked me right there?
Yeah.
But
Oh,
anyway,
oh, look at that.
yeah, that's what I just said.
How ironic is that?
But anyway, we didn't think about that kind of stuff at the time.
Isn't that something? But, the car that Bobby won that race with at Rockingham was a house car of Holman and Moody's. And Mario Andretti drove it one time in a USAC race, and Hutcherson drove it. But Mario did win the Daytona 500 with that car.
Earlier that year, yeah.
Yep. And then the car was sold to Darrell Waltrip, and Darrell reskinned it as a Mercury, and that was his first Cup ride that he took at Talladega. And now, if you go to Darrell's shop up in Concord, North Carolina, that car's sitting there in his showroom, and that's the car that Bobby used to win that first race. So we thought that was kind of ironic. But, yeah, talking about that little guy, funny that they just had it up there on the screen. You all kind of didn't get along there for a while, did you? What happened there?
Oh, we got along fine.
Oh, did you really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Anybody
I mean,
remember the 1979 Daytona 500?
You know,
Yes, sir.
Every time it's brought up, every time that race is brought up, which is about once a week or twice a week, I said, just watch. I said, people want to say, well, what happened? I said, I'm going to clean it up a little bit. I said, the SOB wrecked me. If you don't believe it, watch. I said, in the first place, I asked Bill France Jr., how do you wreck somebody from the front? And, you know, it's a situation, there's a lot of things, you know, after the fact, there's things you can go back, well, I'd done this, or I'd done that, or I'd done that. And, you know, the only thing maybe I would have done different if I would have realized a little earlier is I'd have run through 1 and 2 in the bottom lane.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because that given day, now I do not agree with the blocking like they do now. I do not agree with the driver leading the race, go from the bottom to the top, to the bottom, to the top. I said, you're allowed to do this one time. Back up a few years to Joey Logano and Matt Kenseth at Kansas City. If people watch that race and are truthful with themselves, the first time that he cut Joey off, Joey almost crashed. He backed up, and this is out of Joe Logano's mouth to me. I'm very, very close to the boy.
Mm-hmm.
He said, D.A., he said, I had no intention of wrecking that guy. He said, the second time I was ready, and that's when I went down. He said, but when he came down, where was I to go?
Mm-hmm.
And I told you, we had a meeting with France and Jim France, and I told them the same thing. They said, well, they looked at the film and they didn't see it that way. I said, well, that's your prerogative. But, you know, that deal at Daytona in 79, there's a lot of things you can go back and say, well, I'd have done this, I'd have done that. That's hindsight. Mm-hmm. The SOB wrecked me. You know, I tell everybody, you know, I had good Daytona 500s. I wasn't able to win it, and I said that son was gonna wreck me, and I ain't won it yet.
Yeah, no, you came by just to be, you know, just to help your brother out, right? The race was over.
Yeah, the race was over. I went around and I passed the wreckage, and Daonnie was climbing out of his car, so I knew he wasn't hurt bad, and I went around and finished the race, which was my job, you know. I mean, I actually worked for Bud Moore, and, you know, I was supposed to finish the race if I could. Mm-hmm. So I went around and finished the race and slowed down and pulled up there out from where Donnie's car was. Daonnie and Keel were both way down in the grass, and the grass was wet from the night, rains the night before. And so I didn't want to get the car with the slicks down in the wet grass. So I stopped out there on the apron, and I hollered to Daonnie, did he want to ride back to the garage area? And he was disgusted, which naturally he should have been. And now I go on, I'll get a ride. And I put the car in gear to start going, and Keel come running over yelling that the wreck was my fault. And I think I questioned his ancestry. Which I should not have done that. He lunged at me and hit me in the face with his helmet. He cut my nose and my lip, and I said, I gotta get out of this car and handle this right now or run from him the rest of my life. So I got out of the car. Daonnie says pretty quick. Got out of the car, and he went to beating on my fist with his nose. My story, and I'm sticking to it.
And with that, we're going to take our last break.
The caution flag is out. Time for a break. We'll be right back with the Legends of Racing radio show. Welcome to the Janet Hale Foundation website. With this website, we hope to broaden our reach, to find someone like you to help us on our journey. Janet's journey started 40 years ago to ensure that all children had a toy under the tree at Christmas. Today, thousands of toys and clothing are donated for underprivileged kids. We need your help to continue our journey. Tour this website and find the Donate Now button. A small gesture can make a big difference in a young life. We need your help. Visit us on Facebook, Janet Hale Foundation, or call 386-256-0752. We're back from where it all began, racing's original North Turn Beach Bar and Grill. The Legends of Racing radio show continues with your host, Buzz McKim.
Yeah. Did you ever race under an assumed name, Bobby?
Yeah, I'm afraid I did.
Did you ever know my mother?
My mom said I couldn't race and live at that house. And I thought about that. And our older sister was dating a good friend of ours in the neighborhood by the name of Bob Sunman. And Bob Sunman's father had a NASCAR modified car, and Bob had a NASCAR license. And so I needed a NASCAR license to run Hollywood anyway, and I could run Holly and Medley with just a regular whatever I had, but had to have NASCAR for up there. And so I had borrowed Bob's NASCAR license, and so signed in with that and I think I ran about 6th in the feature race, which wasn't good, but wasn't bad. Mm-hmm. And Sunday morning, my dad's sitting there in his chair, and we went to 8 o'clock mass like usual, and then he come back and he sat in the chair for a while and went through the paper, and he says, "Hey boy, what's this in this paper? Who is this Bob Sunderman guy?" So what happened, the chief steward, when he signed me in, he knew I wasn't Bob Sunderman, so he changed it to Bob Sunderman. And I said, "Dad, I got to do it. I got to do it." So my dad said, "If you want to race, you use your own name, you do it with honor." And that was the last of that deal.
My mother got overruled that time.
Mom was kind of unhappy about the whole deal, but we made it.
Now, how many kids were in your family?
There were 10 of us.
Wow, 10, really? Yep.
Just,
I remember when Bobby and Donnie's mom, turned 100. And you remember when Willard Scott used to, give out the birthday greetings to folks that were centenarians, and he mentioned Mrs. Allison that day when she turned 100. That was.
Let me tell you a better one than that.
Yeah.
She got a card hand signed from the Pope.
From the Pope.
From the Pope.
Holy cow, that's impressive. Not Bill France.
No.
Okay.
No, this was the other. That's Bobby's Pope. This is the other Pope.
Oh, okay. The real Pope. Okay. Well, we're coming down to our last minute. We cannot thank you enough for being a part of this and for all you've given us over the years and all you sacrificed for the sport. And it's just wonderful. We want to thank Walt and what's her face? Rhonda, that's right, for their support of the North Turn. And Shane, our trusty and faithful engineer, our spiritual advisor, Mike Multane. He hates when I say that, but. And then also Elizabeth, our good friend Elizabeth Wicks, who made this incredible cake. And she's hoping it's enough for everybody. So we're going to go ahead and chop it up and put it on some plates. And if you're really quick, you might get a piece of that beautiful cake. We thank you so much for that. And next week, we're going to have Shelley and Mandy Rossmeyer from Rossmeyer Motorcycles here at Harley Davidson. They're awesome people. And so tune in for that. And you can catch us on Facebook Live. And also later on in a day or two, I think you can catch us on YouTube. And also Blog Talk Radio. I'm going to get that right yet. So anyway, there's a lot of different ways you can catch us. But yeah, the Facebook Live, it should be coming up most any minute. And I got to say hi to my dear old mom. She was supposed to be here today, but she's still in New Jersey helping her sister.
You better quit calling her old.
Yeah. Well, she's kind of old. But she's nice.
My mother was 101 when she died, and she didn't want to be called old.
Oh, geez. Well, I better check back in with her to make sure. Yeah, I might be in trouble. Anyway, thank you so much, folks. We appreciate your support. How about those Allisons, huh?
The Legends of Racing Radio Show originates live from the very spot where beach racing began, Racing's North Turn Beach Bar and Grill. Join us next time for the Legends of Racing Radio Show with Buzz McKim.